Hi, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Controversial Truth Podcast. I'm Greg.
I'm Tony.
And today's episode, we're doing tattoos, which is kind of funny because Tony's a tattoo artist.
I am. I try.
He's a sinner, basically, is what it boils down to. A dirty, rotten sinner that's on his way to hell.
Mm-hmm. Hopefully not, though.
I'm just kidding. So yeah, we're just going to talk about arguments for tattoos or why they're okay or not.
Are they sin and such?
So go over all the jargon.
Yeah.
About tattoos and stuff. Maybe a little bit more of a cheery episode than last week's. So. But we're also going to point a lot of fingers at you.
Who's we? It's just there's you and me.
Christian's going to point. Our camera guy is going to point fingers at you as well.
Okay. So you got. Are tattoos sinning? Is it a sin to get a tattoo inherently?
No. I would argue no. I would hope not. I have tattoos that you gave me. So.
But what about those verses? What about people seeing the Bible says you should not mark up your body? And
oh, that's a good point because
there are people.
This goes back to the tables of the law that we talked about last week that we didn't end up explaining at the beginning of the episode. We were like, hey, we'll explain this, and then we didn't. So
stuff that is still relevant versus not.
Yeah, so this week we can actually explain it because I think we forgot to explain that at the end of the episode last week.
Yeah.
So yeah, this will even play back into the topic from last week about the homosexual topic. So
yeah.
So the reason I would say no, I guess we'll just might as well just explain this now.
Sure.
The tables of law. So you have three tables of the law in the Old Testament. You have ceremonial law, you have cultural law, and then you have moral law. Moral law transcends time. I'm sorry, so not space.
Oh.
I guess space too.
I guess.
But anyway, so moral law is something that God gave, like the Ten Commandments, that would still be completely and totally applicable to us because it was given to the morality of humans. It wasn't given to the society or the ceremony. Mm-hmm. So then you have the ceremonial laws, which are the laws that were given to Israel concerning sacrifice and concerning the way that they were actually supposed to approach God as God's chosen people, and cleanse themselves of sin through the shedding of blood of animals and the sacrifice of animals, or giving of the first fruits or grain offerings. They had tons of different. I don't even know all of them. They had a lot of different things they had to do. It was crazy. So those would be ceremonial laws, and then you had cultural laws, which were things that were laws that God gave them, basically specific for those times because God knew okay, you shouldn't do this because it will harm you physically or it will cause something to not go well with you. Mm-hmm. And so when we read all of the laws in the Old Testament, we have to be very careful to understand which law is in which table, so that we can understand whether or not we actually need to follow it, or whether it's relevant to today. And so let me pull up the verse that everybody goes to here, Leviticus 19:28. You are not to make any cuttings in your flesh for the dead or make any tattoo marks upon yourself. I am Adonai. So that's the verse that everybody goes to.
That's the only verse.
It's literally the only verse.
That's the go-to verse because
is the only verse.
The word tattoo is found once in the Bible, and it's Leviticus 19:28. Exactly. That's the only time it's in there.
Yep. And so usually people that are terribly against tattoos will stop there and they'll say they're wrong because of that verse.
Yes.
But if you read on to the very next verse, must be before. Yeah, you are not to eat any meat with the blood still in it, nor are you to use enchantments or practice sorcery. So right before that verse, it talks about not eating red meat. Now, obviously we do that. And no one has a problem with that. No one bats an eye. It also talks in that chapter about not trimming your beard. Obviously, we do that. Our
beards are trimmed, yes.
And I think, if I remember correctly, women are in that not to cut their hair. For it is shameful for a woman to cut their hair, according to that chapter. So that chapter is broken up into two different sections. The section that was after, which I thought was before, is the section that is more of a moral law, where it starts talking about obviously not selling your daughter into prostitution and treating your neighbor right. But the section before that is talking about cultural law. And so you have a lot of different context. I don't know if you want to get into it or not, like the historical background of why they actually said not to tattoo your body or could cut yourself for the dead.
Sure.
So if you want to get into that.
Yeah. So cutting the body as part of religious worship was common back then, which is what Leviticus 19:28 is talking about, religious rituals and such. Another example of this occurs in 1 Kings when the prophet Elijah confronted the priests of Baal. So the first Kings 18:26 through 28. It's kind of long, so. Then they took the ox which was given to them, and they prepared it and called on the name of Baal from morning until noon, saying, "O Baal, answer us." But there was no voice, and no one answered. And they leaped about the altar which they made. And it came about noon, and Elijah mocked them and said, "Call out with a loud voice, for he is a god. Either he is occupied or gone aside, or he is on a journey, or perhaps he is asleep and needs to be awakened." So they cried with loud voices and cut themselves according to their custom with swords and lances until the blood gushed out of them. So for one, that's kind of a funny passage because he's like, oh, maybe your God's asleep. That's why he's not responding. So I thought that was funny. But aside from that, cutting yourself was something that non-Jews did.
Yeah, it was common practice.
Yeah, it was, in pretty much always it was in response to something with their gods or their false gods. So since ancient times, men and women have cut and painted themselves as part of their religious worship. It was and is still common in countries for younger men to manipulate and tattoo their bodies. And I have several countries and places here, the people that did it. And many others used tattoos. God prohibits any activities associated with religious worship of other so-called gods.
Yeah.
So there wasn't anything inherently wrong with like giving yourself a tattoo or giving a tattoo or getting a tattoo. The problem was that when that was going on, it was in response, whether in celebration or mourning or something, to false gods. And that's why it was a problem. It was kind of acknowledging other gods that are not God.
Yeah. And you see that throughout the Old Testament where God's telling the Israelites to do things, or not to do things a lot of times, but also to do things that seem kind of trivial to us. We're like, why? And if you ask the question of why, because those fall into the cultural law, you find out that, like you said, the reason that they were not to do those specific things wasn't necessarily always because they were inherently wrong, but because other cultures practiced them, and God set his chosen people, the Israelites, to be set apart, to be holy and different from the nations around them. And so he would give them these instructions of things not to do or things to do to set them apart, to let everyone else know that, hey, we are God's chosen people. We are, our God is one,
Yeah.
And so they would actually set themselves apart in this way to let people know that they worship Yahweh. And so that's the same thing there. That's a good point that you bring up, because I think that really is the crux of the argument.
Yeah. And so then I have a little bit more on the at least the cutting aspect of it. Some people would say that means that you can never cut the body. So like they kind of take that to the extreme that, like, no, God meant you can never cut the body ever because the body is sacred, and it has nothing to do with like religious stuff at all.
Is that where people get it from for like not getting surgery and stuff?
Yes.
Oh, okay, I never thought.
So they take it to, some people take it to that point, that like God says you can never cut the flesh or mark the flesh. So then some people do think that God prohibits the cutting of the body even for like medical reasons, like operations and surgeries. But that doesn't even make sense, because God literally commanded the Jews to circumcise themselves. So God does allow us to cut our bodies clearly, but we need to remember when that's okay and when it's not. And if you're doing it to harm yourself for like emotional reasons, then yes, you are sinning, because your body is still the temple of God, and shouldn't be abused. But as for like, no, God says you can never cut the body, not even for medical reasons. Clearly you can for medical reasons, because God commanded an entire nation to do that in another way to set themselves apart from other nations. So the cutting one doesn't make sense because that's pretty clear there. So now as for marking the body, aside from religious or for other gods and stuff, modern day tattoos.
Because well,
that's not a thing anymore.
But
I guess
traditionally tattoos are just something you do, which
they're cosmetic.
Right, exactly. So actually that brings me to my next question though, because I think we agree on this. Can you sin by getting a tattoo?
Yes.
Okay. So I would agree with that.
I believe yes. So my thoughts on that is it ever a sin to get a tattoo? Can getting a tattoo be a sin? I'd say yes, depending on what you get. There are many things that I believe would be a sin to get tattooed, all of which are things that I, as a Christian tattoo artist, refuse to tattoo onto people. So like anything vulgar, graphic, obscene, satanic, demonic, etc. I refuse to do it, and I just say that like I'm not the artist for you. Like I don't do stuff like that. I think if you got those things, that's probably I'd say that's a sin. You shouldn't do that.
So what about just getting a tattoo for because I'm kind of even more a little bit strict than that. I think even just getting a tattoo for the sake of getting a tattoo is wrong. Like if you're not, like for me, I mean, you've done some of my tattoos, like every one of them has meaning, and I think
not everyone. Some of you are just like I want this because I saw it and it looked pretty
right, exactly.
Nice on somebody else. So
exactly. So I don't think that. So and in those instances, I think those are wrong. Like, I don't think there's any point in doing it if it's not going to at least be a reminder to you when you see it of like, okay, this means something. That's for me, like I said, that's why I didn't get a lot of the tattoos that I wanted when I was younger, because it's like, okay, I realized that some of those were just like
you'd be covered in some dumb stuff.
Exactly, and then it's like that was pointless. It was one. I mean, and tattoos are expensive. You know that.
I do know that.
So. Yeah, because like you do it. So
yeah.
But anyway, yeah. So I mean, it would be not only just pointless in general, but it would also be a waste of money. It could be spent something else. So that's how I kind of view it. So, I mean, unless you're
attacking my job, right? That's how I make a living.
I'm
right?
sorry, man. I told you I was going to be pointing.
I know.
I was going to be pointing fingers at you this time.
I'll give my take on these.
But yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where unless you have the income, like for instance, when I'm budgeting, like. My wife and I, we have money that we're like, okay, we can spend this on frivolous things. This is our kind of spending money, if you will. And I just on a side note, I think people should budget. But if I was just like, we have a kid now, if I was just go blow half our savings on getting my body tattooed, do you think that would be, even if they were all really good tattoos that were very mindful of Christ and somebody saw me like, oh, wow, that guy's clearly a Christian because of all his religious tattoos, or at least they know I was religious in some way. That would be, in my opinion, very sinful because I just completely squandered when we're called to be good stewards of our wealth, right, or of our money. And so that's where I come into it as well, is like, if you're spending above and beyond what you've portioned for your spending money, and you're using it. And you're just getting, or you're getting random tattoos that have no meaning and won't point you or anyone back to Christ, I would call that sinful.
Okay, I had that question here.
Okay.
Yeah, I was gonna ask you if there's anything wrong with a Christian getting a tattoo that they just think is cool with no relation to God or the Bible. You would say yes.
I would answer yes.
Okay. Do you think it's a sin, or would you just recommend against it?
For sure, if it's coming out of money that God's wanting you to put elsewhere, because it is irresponsible, right?
Isn't that all money?
Well, I mean, I don't want, without getting, we'll have an episode on money and good stewardship of money. And so without getting into too much detail on that, yes, you're right.
Sure.
But, that doesn't negate the fact that tattoos are still, in that category.
For me, money-wise, my opinion on, is it a waste of money for someone to get a tattoo that's just cool or that they like? Yeah. I'd recommend against it, against that specific type of tattoo as a Christian. And I said here, because God gives us money to use for God. We're blessed with, if we're blessed with extra money, we're blessed with extra money in order to pay that forward kind of and bless others with it. And I can't say that getting a random tattoo is being a good steward of the money that God has given to you. Yeah, so that's my, I'm right there with you. You won't be seeing me getting something.
And that's why I haven't got a tattoo
like
from you in a while.
Whatever you do for the glory of God. So
yeah.
I think if you just get something because, I don't think that falls under that. So you think tattoos are fine as a personal reminder, though, like of something biblical?
Yeah, I think is fine, and I think it's a difficult. It's one of those things that's difficult to have the proper motivation because of the culture we live in, because it is such a just a frivolous, do it if you want sort of thing in this culture. I do take seriously the charge that the Bible gives us that the body is the temple of the Lord, right?
Same.
And so, yeah, I know you do. And so with that, I want to be careful, one, with how I spend my money, of course, and two, with what I do. And, and this can go into the topic of, you could give me a rebuttal of like, oh, well, you maybe don't exercise the best, or you don't eat the best, and so those things are probably more important than, the tattoo's never going to affect me barring you screwing up and giving me an infection. Exactly. So you're phenomenal.
I try.
But yeah, what I eat on a daily basis, even though I do eat decently healthy, it's not amazing, and it's probably doing more harm to me than any of my tattoos ever have.
But you have reminders.
I don't know.
Like your tattoos are reminders.
Right, exactly. My tattoos are reminders. But I'm trying to say, like, I'm still kind of going off like the motive. So if you were to get a tattoo that's a reminder, but you do it because you just want to look cool, you didn't do it for the right reason. It's not a reminder. It's not a reminder. It's just a
fashion.
It's a fad. Yeah. Or, what do they? Yeah, I guess a fashion trend or whatever.
Yeah. Yep. So yeah, I have a little bit here on like the reminder aspect, or something that you need to work on, which is nothing biblically. There's nothing wrong with doing something like on your person as a reminder for biblical things.
Oh, of course not.
So like Jewish people used to put like boxes on their head. They like strap boxes to their heads, kind of. And they put,
some of them would. They took that verse literally. This goes back to the eschatology. It all goes back.
And they'd write a verse or something in it, or a word or whatever.
Yeah.
Stuff they're like, I need to focus on this today. They'd wrap it up, put it in that little box, tiny little box that'd go on their forehead, and that would, like, seeing that there all day, every day, or whatever, would be a reminder to them of whatever they put in there. So the problem was that pride got in the way. And the boxes started getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and people were like, "Look how big the box in my head is! Look at all the scripture I'm meditating on today." And it became more of a pride thing than a genuine reminder type thing. And the same thing goes with like writing a word on your body. I know, like, several people, pastors included, that like might for a week straight or a day or whatever write like grace on their hand, or mercy, or kindness, or gentleness, or self-control, or something. That's something they need to remember, that they need to work on. And just like the boxes on foreheads of like the Jewish people, like I just talked about, there's nothing wrong with doing this unless your motivation isn't to improve yourself, but it's like to be seen and be noticed. Or doing it in the hopes that others view you in some way, like, I don't know, think more of you than what they do currently. Tattoos are the same thing. They're just permanent. And being permanent, you should think about them a little bit more. But I don't think there's a problem with like a reminder. Do you think that tattoos can genuinely aid in witnessing?
I used to. Back when I was a young, uneducated
a couple
Christian.
Years ago?
Well, young Christian.
Okay.
Not like young as in like physically young. I would still consider myself young to an extent. I don't feel it sometimes though, which is kind of scary because we're only 26. But yes and no.
Okay.
I definitely think that they can potentially spark a conversation in which you could
Absolutely.
witness to somebody. I mean,
Has that ever happened to you firsthand?
people have asked me about some of my tattoos, and
Well, I suppose yours are
I explained.
hidden for the most part.
Yeah, none of my. I mean, the one on my leg, people have seen. People have seen the ones on my feet and stuff. You know, and they've asked, and I've got to explain it to them, but it never really went anywhere past just explaining what it was. So I don't think that's a good reason. I think it could be a thing that happens, but I don't think you should go get a tattoo being like, I want to ticket into witnessing to this
Like,
person.
I'm getting this because I want people to ask me about it.
Right, yeah, that's not a good reason to get a tattoo. Like, I genuinely think the only reason you should get a tattoo is to have it be a reminder to yourself, ultimately, to you look at it and you see it and you go, okay, you know, this tattoo means this, and it sparks your mind to think about things above, to fix your eyes on Jesus, you know. Other than that, I don't think there's a good reason for it. And even though the potential perk could be that somebody could ask you about it, and yes, you could potentially segue that into witnessing to them. But if you need a tattoo to justify witnessing to someone,
Exactly.
then you've missed it.
Yeah.
You've missed the.
You should be living in such a way that
Yeah.
causes them to ask you about it.
Right. Exactly.
What about? So yes, no. Witness, like it can be a witness.
It can be, yeah, but don't get a tattoo to try to witness to people.
What if you're getting covered in tattoos in an attempt to reach people who are covered in tattoos?
That's weird.
I don't know.
I mean, like,
To this
Like,
group,
I
I
would-
became this. To the Jews, I became a Jew.
right, yeah, okay. So
the
I mean,
tattoos, I got tattooed.
let's take the example of me having been in a band before.
Yeah.
I was in a band, and that was the scene I was in, so I would kind of take on the metal kid
Sure.
persona, if you will, and which was something I enjoyed. I mean, I enjoyed that scene. I enjoyed the group of people. It was some of the best memories of my life. And if at that point I had gotten tattooed to try to fit in, which I wanted to, but you know, certain financial circumstances didn't allow me to.
Yeah.
So anyway, I lost my train of thought. Yeah, for that
Getting tattooed
for that instance, you know, with me having been in that scene already,
Yeah.
and then getting tattooed to try to fit in further, sure. But if you're just like, you know, you're some blue collar worker, and you're like, today I want to go try to reach these hardcore kids over here, so I'm gonna go get tattooed, then that's just weird, you know. It's like,
It is weird.
It's like no one does that, and if you did, then you're trying too hard.
I don't know.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I don't think there's any justification to go get tattoos to try to reach a people group. If Lord willing, you get tattoos and somebody asks you about it and it segues into being able to reach them, then awesome, more power to you. But I don't.
That has happened to me, at least.
Yeah.
Which it will, you know, more often than others. being
Right.
That's what I do for a living.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, they've started up some conversation. I don't even have that many,
Mm-hmm.
which kind of makes the ones I do have more noticeable, I think.
And it's also kind of odd because every other tattoo
I
artist
have,
is
like,
literally
almost
covered
none.
from head to
Yes.
toe, and you're like, if you have a long sleeve on, you don't even know. Other than
My
your
lack
fingers.
of tattoos brings up more conversation
Right.
than ones I have.
Yeah.
And then they're like, "What? Well, what do you have any? Do you not have any?" So I'm like, you know,
Wouldn't that be funny though if you had none?
Yeah.
Like, I don't even like tattoos. I just like to do it.
there's people. And some people won't get
I
tattooed
don't-
by anyone that don't have that if they don't have any.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they're like, you don't. I don't know. It's a weird thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, the people have asked me like about mine, and I'm mindful of that when I was when I got them. The very first one I got is like the cross on my wrist, and I put it on my wrist so people would see it. And if they didn't ask me, if it didn't lead to them asking me about my faith, they at least like knew.
Yeah.
Maybe they knew that I had it. And I put it, you know, there for some other reasons. But yeah, they've sparked up some conversation, and all the ones that I have are reminders, I think, and they're this like stuff I need to work on, and stuff that I admit like lacking in that I hope to be solid in one day. Stuff I need to work on.
Like the one on your back that you see all the time.
I never see that. The one, my finger and my wrist and form and such. It's stuff that I need. admit that I struggle with and want to work on, and I don't see a problem with that. Even if someday that's not something you struggle with anymore, it at least reminds you of a time that you did struggle with it, and you can show people that you struggled with it. But but as for like getting some for their sole reason to witness, it's kind of, I don't think there's anything wrong with it. It's kind of weird.
Yeah.
But there's but as a whole, I don't think there's anything wrong with tattoos. There are obviously tattoos that you shouldn't get. The obvious ones, and then I'm glad that you brought up the money point, because I also had that, because you are to be a good steward of your money, and you shouldn't be, as a Christian, you probably shouldn't be blowing hundreds or thousands of dollars on pictures on your body, and
hundreds or thousands.
Oh,
I think you said hundreds of thousands. I know it's expensive, but who's blowing hundreds? I sold my house, got a tattoo.
Yeah. And also, there can only be so many that you get before, you're not mindful of each one of them.
Yeah.
But yeah, so.
Yeah, I think I would agree with that, and I would caution anybody that was contemplating, I want to get a tattoo. Be mindful of it, think about it, think it through. Don't just whimsically go and get a tattoo. Even pray about it. I think that there's definitely a case to be made for praying, bringing it before God, and seeing if it's actually something that is being done in the right motive, because that's one of the things that the Spirit can do, is reveal our motives to us, because sometimes we don't even know our own motives. Sometimes we think we're doing it for the right reasons, and then you do a little bit of praying and you're like, that's not why I was doing it.
Do you have any more questions for me as an artist?
Yeah, so I wanted to bring up a couple of different points, because
I don't know what these are.
What's that?
I said I don't know what these are either. Are you gonna put me
I'm gonna put you on the spot a little bit.
All right.
Because we covered tattoos themselves. Now you as an artist, so obviously we agree that Christians can have tattoos given the right circumstances.
Yeah.
You're a tattoo artist.
I am.
And I think that for me would go even a little bit further than the tattoo argument. Now, I don't see anything inherently wrong with being a tattoo artist, but I do agree, like many other professions, it could potentially, and I think you would even agree with this, at least at this point, it gets you one step closer. It gets your foot in the door to a very sinful place, a place where generally is, not.
Like the environment?
Right, the environment. The environment is
generally
hostile towards God, right?
Sure, they'd be the first to tell you that, probably.
Yeah, well, no, I don't even mean verbally hostile towards God.
Not verbally, but the whole environment's pretty ungodly.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And so, I guess just, when you're in that environment, you don't see anything wrong with being in some of the situations. There's public nudity that goes on there sometimes. It's not a common thing, but it happens. You don't see, how do you get around those things, I guess?
Sure. It's not the greatest environment, but I also don't think Christians should keep themselves from being in those environments.
Of course not. I would.
Those people need to be reached also, and if we just kind of live in our own Christian bubble, we'll never reach anybody, I guess. Right. Which I know you weren't saying, but I try to avoid those things, and we each have our own station, our own booth, and if anyone's doing anything that is involves some degree of nudity, each artist kind of we have a curtain, or we get a something to cover up that person, so that the rest of the shop can't see that person, because nobody really wants to be exposed. Some people do, which is weird, but they're like, no, I'm good. And I'm like, no, you're going to put this on.
Yeah.
But if I'm tattooing a woman's chest or side or collar or something, we have them cover up. We have them put pasties on, or if they don't have any, or if we don't have any, we put we give them a paper towel and tape, and they can cover themselves up, so I can still reach the area without being nudity in my face while I'm trying to work. And as for below the belt areas, I don't even bother with, and I pass that on to somebody else if they want it. I'm like, no, I don't do that.
Yeah.
So if I can, pretty much anything that could cause me to sin, I try to nip that in the bud right away and make that a topic, not what I don't know. It doesn't happen. I stop that before it starts. Like
Right.
I don't put myself into that position personally.
That's good.
Yeah,
Admirable of you.
I do what I can.
I guess that was the more specific question I had regarding it. But do you think, and we've talked about this a little bit in the past, one of the things that, obviously we talked about it last time a little bit too, is like, some people struggle with homosexuality. Some people struggle with, for you and I, generally it's lust towards women,
Sure.
Stuff like that. If we were going to struggle with any sort of sexual sin, and you don't think there's any possible situation there where, or not situation. I mean, I think you would definitely agree there's possible situations, but you don't think it's a risk putting yourself closer to those situations?
I think it depends on the person. I think if you know yourself and what you struggle with and what you're confident in well enough, that you can be in a position that might cause someone else to sin, that you can stand firm in. I think maybe like I'm not like lifting myself up at all, but I think a lesser or more immature Christian might give in to the temptations that come with the job. And I think I am I don't know, mature enough and strong enough in my faith to avoid anything like that. And we've talked about it before. Like sometimes I tattoo past clothes, and like everybody's gone. I need to finish this tattoo up, and I might be left alone in the shop with a woman or something,
or something like an alien.
I
Just another
a
one.
woman,
Yeah.
I guess, is the only not or something.
Extraterrestrial.
And we've talked about this before, and we disagreed.
Yeah.
And I think we still disagree on it. And you and whoever it was, that was
I think it was Eric.
was it?
Yeah.
They were like, you should end that tattoo right when people are leaving. You shouldn't put yourself in position to be alone with a woman that is not your wife. And I disagree.
I feel like that's just generally a good rule of thumb.
It's a good idea, like, to avoid.
You're like, I don't need it.
But I think I'm all right. I know I'm all right. It's been
Right. One of the things
several
you
years.
did mention, which obviously I think would be one of the most important keys to this, is you had a conversation with your wife about it, and she was okay
if
with
she
it.
had a
It
problem
wasn't-
with it, I wouldn't. I'd
Right.
be home.
Okay. So I mean, given that information, I mean, I can't tell you what to do. You
Yeah.
obviously it's not, you're not sinning. I can't say like don't put yourself in those situations, because you, like you said, you know yourself. I know for myself personally, I don't put myself in those situations, because that is something that I've always struggled with. Not that I think that I would give in, because obviously that's, you don't even want to think like that ever. But I just don't put myself in those situations just
I
as
get
as an area of precaution. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's just that's one of those things we'll just have to agree to disagree on, I suppose. And
I think, yeah, I guess so. I'm confident in myself that I would not sin when put in that position. I've been in that position many times, and I have not.
Yeah, and I mean,
growing, closer to God, it shouldn't be something that I shouldn't think nothing of it. It should be like on my mind while it's happening. Like this, I am currently in a position where things could go bad if I'm not, in Christ and have that right mindset.
Yeah.
Which I do have, like while I'm in it. But if I like blew that off and I was like, no, I'm not.
if you get
Women aren't a
overconfident,
threat. Like then you might get, I don't know, compromised, I guess, spiritually, and that's just not something that I do. But also, I think that I think it's irresponsible of me as an artist to cut the tattoo short when I know that they waited to get in with me like 4 months to get it tattooed by me, and then I'm like, oh, gotta stop. It's 6 or 7. And then I'll, it's, what is it? It's early June right now. It's like, oh, your tattoo's halfway done. I'll see you in November when I can finish it up. I think that's kind of, you're doing a disservice to your client. Kind of, I think it's very rude to leave a tattoo halfway done. And that, I don't know, I feel like that's kind of wrong to do anyways. So I try to finish them up and get them out of there and get home to my lovely wife, who I love very much.
yeah, no, I mean, I would agree with that. I mean, it is. I guess I could.
But it is obviously a position that could lead to, I don't know, sin, I guess.
Yeah.
But I'm confident in faith and my stance.
Yeah. Well,
Which that we disagree on, but everything else though, tattoos are not sin inherently.
No.
But you can get a tattoo that is a sin if it is not
proper.
Yeah, if it's not proper, if it's not like that. I think we both agree, which is kind of a step further than most people go. We both agree that it should be like either for God, a reminder for yourself on keeping your mind on God, or even if it is a witness to others, that you should be trying to get them to look at God. And anything other than that is either trivial or frivolous, or I don't know. It just probably shouldn't be done, especially the money point. So
yeah, the money point's I think the biggest.
That's probably the biggest point. Yeah.
Yeah, we have to be good stewards of our money and good stewards of the things God gives us. And
yes.
Yeah.
All right, I agree.
Do you want to go further into the money topic since we have a little bit of time?
Or don't. I want that to have. I have a lot to say on the money.
Yeah,
topic.
that's going to be a
money and savings and retirement and lifestyle and all
give
that,
it all
that fun stuff. I'm looking forward to that.
But no, as a beggar on the street. What did you just call that? Like you were talking about different forms of the gospel. You said
prosperity gospel and then poverty gospel.
Yeah, poverty
is the opposite, but also
you have to be like poor in order to be a Christian.
Kinda,
like if you have any money whatsoever, you're not a Christian.
Yeah, you gotta give it. Yeah, we'll get into that. That'll be fun.
That will be a fun topic. Maybe we'll do that next.
Maybe, yeah. Because I know we have some. I don't know. We might have some disagreements money-wise.
We'll definitely have some disagreements on that one.
I'm a little bit more extreme.
Yeah, I think we'll definitely find some disagreement there, and people can see us hash it out for the first time.
That'll be fun. Yeah.
On camera.
All right.
Until we get to the eschatology one, and then we can really we'll get our like guns out.
Oh my goodness! I'm not gonna be able to like stay composed during that one. That one and
I'm so excited for that one.
Eschatology and like salvation security. I'm probably gonna not be so chilled. I might get a little.
I'm chill on the salvation security one because you're set on it. I'm like I see both sides, so I'm
one of them is right.
I'm less to be right. I agree. Obviously one of them's right. I just don't know which is which.
You will be convinced at the end of it.
We'll see.
All right. Wrap it up.
Yeah. Well, Tony wants me to wrap it up. So thanks guys for watching. We didn't really discuss a whole ton other than tattoos today, so it was just we stayed on topic pretty well.
Yeah. Get one or don't.
Yeah, get one or don't.
If you do Tony McLaurin tattoos,
he does good work. I will admit. I mean, the first one you gave me was like when you had just been tattooing for like a month. That one didn't turn out the best, but then you gave me one at like, I don't know, you were probably like a year and a half in at that point. It was
thanks,
spot on. So and you also tattooed my wife.
For the glory of God, so I do my best every time. You can count on it.
Yeah.
Always.
That I can attest to.
Okay.
All right. Thanks guys for watching or listening, whatever you're choosing, whatever platform you're choosing to. Man, I keep forgetting words. I was going to say observe on, but that partake in.
I guess.
I don't know. We've recorded too many episodes. I'm losing my mind.
Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Spotify, YouTube.
Have a great week.
See you guys.